Hello, this is Lector Preparation for August 23rd, 2015, the 21st Sunday in Ordinary Time. So we have a reading from the book of Joshua, and we have the last of 7 accounts from the book of St. Paul to the Ephesians, and then we also have the last of 5 excerpts from the 6th chapter of the Gospel of John. So the first reading of Joshua, what you need to know is that Joshua is Moses' successor. Of course, Moses led the people out of the land of Egypt, and then they wandered about in the desert for 40 years. But before they entered the promised land, Moses was told that he wasn't going to be able to. And knowing that, he instructed that Joshua would be the one. So Joshua now has taken Moses' place. So when he calls the people together, in your description there at the liner notes to the left, he said this is kind of like calling together the Congress, the Supreme Court, and some of the chiefs of staff. These are all the big wigs of the whole nation, so he's called them together. So try to emphasize that momentousness of this calling together. And then there's a point when Joshua addresses the people, and make sure you kind of shift your voice. You're no longer then a narrator, but you are a person, Joshua, speaking to a crowd of people. In the middle of the reading, there's a very famous and beloved text, "As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." And you want to make sure you say this very deliberately. And if this is a part of who you are, very affectionately. And I hope it is a part of who you are as a Christian. The next part is the response of the people, in which they agree that they will also serve the Lord. So this is the first reading. A reading from the book of Joshua. Joshua gathered together all the tribes of Israel at Shechem, summoning their elders, their leaders, their judges, and their officers. When they stood in ranks before God, Joshua addressed all the people. "If it does not please you to serve the Lord, decide today whom you will serve. The gods your fathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose country you are now dwelling. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." But the people answered, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord for the service of other gods, for it was the Lord our God who brought us and our fathers up from out of the land of Egypt, out of the state of slavery. He performed those great miracles before our very eyes and protected us along our entire journey and among the peoples through whom we passed. Therefore, we also will serve the Lord, for He is our God." The word of the Lord. Okay, so we'll move on to the book, the letter to St. Paul to the Ephesians. I'm going to make a call here, and there is an option to do the shorter reading, and I want to choose it, and it's for this reading, for this reason. If you've already looked at the text, you'll realize that there are a few lines in there which would be kind of hard for most of us to say, because it could be interpreted in ways that we don't really want them to. If you'll read in the commentary below, it talks about how this is written to people who think in Jewish terms. We tend to think more in terms of Greek terms, which is separation of the flesh and the body. So we're not going to receive this reading in the same way that the Ephesians will. So in this first part, he talks about wives being subordinate to their husbands. Just that line in itself is, I think it would just be distracting, and I'm going to make a call, and we're going to not do that. The point is really that we are to be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's the point of this whole thing. If you get to the second part, it talks about husbands to love your wives, and that's what it's all about. Furthermore, he says it's a great mystery. So I'm going to make that call, and I want you just to do the shortened version. And that's going to what that entails is you're going to do the intro, the brothers and sisters, and skip down to husbands, love your wives. I will contact the priest. The priests will be preaching this weekend, and let them know. And if they do want to include that other one, then I'll let them tell you. I'll need for them to tell you that. I just think it would be better, and I hope you don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to change the word of the Lord or anything at all. We're still reading the word. So in this, since it is, for one thing, since it is shorter, and it's very emotional, really. I want you to, when you get to the word husbands, I want you to give some eye contact to the people and pause. Husbands, love your wives, or love your wives, however you want to say it. It's about love. And it goes on there, and the line where it talks about cleansing her by bath, this is in reference to baptism. So cleansing her by the bath of water and the word, that's the baptism. So you can't really explain that to people as you're doing it, but if you understand it, it'll help you say it a little bit better. And right towards the end, there's a quote from another text, and it says, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother." You need to, your tone needs to change because it's from another text. Okay, so here is the second reading, shortened version. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. Brothers and sisters, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and handed himself over to her to sanctify her, cleansing her by the bath of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. So also husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one hates his own flesh, but rather nourishes and cherishes it, even as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak in reference to Christ and the church. The word of the Lord. Okay, so finally we get to the gospel, and this is again the conclusion of the 6th chapter of John. And this excerpt comes immediately after the last one, and what has happened in the last one, if you remember, that the Jews were quarreling among themselves. They said, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" And then Jesus says, "I am the bread of life." So this is a follow-up of that, and then Peter gives a great response. His response then is in reference to the first reading. If you remember the first reading, Joshua addressed the people and said, "You got to make a decision." And then the people answered Joshua, and they made their decision. No, we're going to choose the Lord, and that's exactly what Peter does here too. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Many of Jesus' disciples who were listening said, "This saying is hard. Who can accept it?" Since Jesus knew that his disciples were murmuring about this, he said to them, "Does this shock you? What if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit that gives life, while the flesh is of no avail. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life, but there are some of you who do not believe." Jesus knew from the beginning the ones who would not believe and the one who would betray him. And he said, "For this reason I have told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted him by my Father." As a result of this, many of his disciples returned to their former way of life and no longer accompanied him. Jesus then said to the 12, "Do you also want to leave?" Simon Peter answered him, "Master, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and are convinced that you are the Holy One of God." The Gospel of the Lord. Thank you again for your time and for your preparation of these readings, and God bless.